A thala like Adi Thalam, if the 8 beats are going to be about one is 0.75, another is 1.25 kind of thing. That is basically the physical time that we actually do. And this is basic concept of rhythm. So when we talk of rhythm, all the complicated pallavis and all the complicated chorways that we do, that's all just an expression of that rhythm in various ways. It's just manifestations of those rhythms. And if this interval is not true, then the music will not be true. In some systems of music, like Hindustani music, a gradual acceleration is allowed. So that you start a composition. If you do that, then after some time, you just keep speeding it up. That is allowed in that. Like a car or a bus, you can start like this and then keep going faster. So that is legal in that particular system. But even in that system, you still need to adhere to that particular tempo that you have intentionally sped up to, at least for the duration that you are actually playing in that tempo. You can't speed up unintentionally. You can't slow down unintentionally. If you do that unintentionally, it is a mistake. If you do it intentionally in systems which allow it, in Carnatic, it's not allowed generally, except in some compositions where in the charanam you are allowed to speed up. So that only happens once in the composition. If it happens more than once, then that is actually illegal. So like this, there are certain basic truths. In Western classical music also, many times, there is actually a lot of similarities between Carnatic and Western classical. Not many Indians realize this, not many Westerners realize this. Okay? The commonalities, in very broad sense, their concept of speed, tempo, and the way they write notation. So when they write normal speed, it will be one way. When they write double speed, they'll underline or upperline it. So all these kind of things are very common to both systems. And their adherence to the Pathantra Shuddham, as we call it. If there is a composition, they will have a lot of rigor on how the composition is polished, learnt innumerable times before it is actually presented. The same kind of thing that we would actually approach a Tyagaraja or Dikshidhar, that is good artists would approach these kind of composers. It's the same kind of principles that is followed in Western classical. In Western jazz and other systems, the compositional structure is less, more improvisation, it's more like Hindustani music. So Carnatic music actually has that aspect also. It also has a compositional aspect. So it's a beautiful blend of the creative and the composed. And so, when you are talking about these two fundamental truths, the Shruti and the Laya, so the intonational purity and then the purity with respect to fundamental rhythmic strength. These are universal truths. And then what is the next truth? It's going to be, if the system has lyrics, then you have to try to do justice to the lyrics. The way you learn the lyrics, the way you try to understand the meaning of the lyrics, the way you try to understand the purport of that lyrics, the way you try to understand the spirit of that particular lyrics. So the artham, the vakyartham, all these things, context of that particular lyrics. All these things you need to try to understand and do justice, whether it's an opera by, say, Mozart, or whether it's an opera by or Uthikadu Venkatakavi, or say Jayadeva, Narayana Tirtha, or whoever, Gopalakrishna Bharati, all these composers, we have to try to understand everything. And even if it's a single one-off compositions, if there are lyrics, we need to do justice. We need to do due diligence to those things and try to see how they are composed. And more than anything else, we should at least do some diligence on how to pronounce each language. So that particular thing, we have to work. We have to make sure that the diction is right and the pronunciation is right. The words are actually coming through in a manner that is suited for that language. Now, for example, the believer, we borrow words from some other language, like say Sanskrit. Tamilian borrows from Sanskrit. So if it is Nagara in Sanskrit, we cannot use the Tamil rule for saying Nagara and say it Nahara. Okay. So whatever language that particular language is the root for that. As much as possible, if those syllables exist in this language, we should use those words. Now, if a Sanskrit person tries to say Tamil, the Ra doesn't exist. So if they can make Tamil, that is okay, because that syllable is not there. Similarly, there are certain syllables which are not there in Tamil, so that is different. But if you are able to pronounce it that way, then that is the way it should be pronounced. And more than anything, that's the way it's supposed to be pronounced. It should not be written in a wrong manner. Now, for example, if you are actually saying a particular word, Shanmukha, you shouldn't write it Shanmugha with a G. You can't write with a G, Maragata. No, those are all not correct things, and then say that, no, it is my language, it is like this only. No, it's not your language word at all first. So that means we are actually not paying attention to the truth over there. So those kind of things, we need to be sure that we write it correctly. Tamil compositions, if you look at some of our publications, actually write the Tamil compositions in such a way that it is pronounced rather than the way it will be written in Tamil. So for example, Maha in Tamil, sometimes it may be written as Maka. We won't actually write it in English like M-A-K-A. No, we'll still write it as M-A-H-A, the way it is supposed to be pronounced. So that is the only way you can ensure that some non-Tamil speaking person will be able to pronounce the language correctly. If you write it in the way that it is actually pronounced in that particular language, then a non-Tamil speaking person will not know the rules of Tamil, and so they won't automatically pronounce it correctly. So these are the small things that we need to be aware of when it comes to the Satyam of the language or the lyrics. Now coming to Carnatic, what are the truths of Carnatic? Why I am saying all this as a preamble is to follow a dharma we need to compromise. Without awareness of the dharma, we cannot follow it. And as they say in law, non-awareness of the law doesn't exempt you from following it, right? So we still need to be held accountable. So we need to empower ourselves with the knowledge first of all these things. And can you all hear me clearly? Suddenly my... So, now coming to Carnatic truths. And I would say this is a truth because the common aspect of these great systems of classical tradition in India is that both of them are centered on the raga. The raga is the satya. The raga, and all the human beings who have ever attempted to sing it, or all beings who are going to sing it or play it or even it. That is like a complete truth that transcends everyone, every personal taste. Guru's dictum. It is beyond and all those things. So any musician who understands the significance of the raga as an ultimate truth will know and will want to follow the dharma for that raga. No matter if the person is singing compositions, Varnam, Kriti, Javali, whatever it is, or improvisation. Alapana, Naravel, Kalpana, Suram, Tanam, anything, that person to do justice to the raga. And this is the greatest truths as far as Indian classical music is concerned, whether it's Carnatic or Hindustani. There could be certain variants, deviations or different handle a Bhageshri in particular gharanas could be different. But at least as long as you are true to that particular gharana, it's fine. As long as it's not some YouTube gharana, then you're okay. It has to be doing justice to that particular school that you represent. here also, in Carnatic also, there could be differences in certain ways. Certain schools may an Atana with little more of the Kakali Nishadam. Some other schools may feel that that is not needed and they may render it with less of that. Some artists may prefer that. That's a cool stylistic thing, and that used to be legal in Atana. Exactly illegal, but the raga has evolved slightly to have less of those dramatic elements in it. Many times the high percentage of Kakali Nishadam, Antara Gandhara used to be more for drama kind of things. When the raga had more of that, because the theatre artists, they would walk in with particular scenes in mind, and then when they think that representation of the raga or presentation of the raga will be very different. And yeah, open minutes. So, nothing, just my throat medicine. So, similarly, there are certain ragas like Ananda Bhairavi where some schools will render Antara Gandharam, some schools will not prefer to render that. So that is a school thing. But if you are representing, at least stay true to that school. In at least 90-95% of the time. Once in a while, if you are influenced by some other legend who has also rendered that beautifully, that's a matter of personal choice. So in other words, in ragas, we should be aware of what is legal, and within that legal, what are the optional sangatis that are allowed in different schools, and we should also know what is not correct. Of anything as style is not right. There is a difference between style and mistake. The fundamental difference in musical terms is if there are 2-3 correct ways of doing something and you choose one of them, that is style. If you choose a 4th way that is not even correct, that's not style, it's a mistake. And we have to be ruthless about that. If you are not ruthless about it and thinking that we are so cute, we are actually doing all this, there's so much of this narcissism and self-love, all that, if we approach music, that is the route for substandard music that is not only justified but also glorified. And why I am saying all this? Because artists, audiences, students, scholars, composers, all of us are on the same team here. So, not only the artist should be aware of these things, the listeners should empower themselves with more knowledge so that they are aware of what is the correct particular way of handling that raga, whether the artist is doing it correctly. That is what is critical appreciation. G. once wrote that whatever you like is not taste. Taste is not about your personal likes and dislikes. Taste is about first being aware of what is to be liked and what is to be disliked. Without that cognition and awareness of what you are supposed to like or not supposed to like, there is no appreciation. Now, for example, somebody singing Sariga in Begada. If you like that, that doesn't make Sariga right in Begada. Sagariga. A signature phrase itself is Sariga. Signature phrase itself, if somebody is murdering and singing Sariga and it sounds nice to your ears, doesn't mean that that is good music. Beautiful little sound. Okay, adu nalla vidwanakal siddhila paadithina romba nalla kekkum. நிறைய ஆர்டிஸ்ட் பாடியும் இருக்கா. அந்த பெரிய வித்வான் பாடியிருக்கான்றதுனால நம்ம அதை சைட் பண்ணி நாம்ளும் அதை பாடணும்னு சொல்லக்கூடாது. அந்த பெரிய வித்வான்களுக்கு இன்னும் எவ்வளோ பெரிய குவாலிட்டிஸ் இருந்தது, அந்த குவாலிட்டிஸ் நம்மக்கிட்டே இல்லை. இதை மட்டும் பிடிச்சி இந்த ராமகிருஷ்ண பரமஹம்சர் சொன்ன மாதிரி either you can either be a sieve or you can be a winnow. What's the difference between the two? Can any of the students tell me what's the difference between a sieve and a winnow? சல்லடைக்கும் மரத்துக்கும் என்ன வித்தியாசம்? ஏதாவது ஸ்டூடெண்ட்டுக்கு சொல்ல ஆன்சர் பண்ண. கரெக்ட், பர்ஃபெக்ட். It will throw away all, retain the essential thing. Whereas the salad will throw away all the essential things and retain only the non-essential things. So, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa once advised people that you are supposed to be like the winnow and not like the sieve. Adanala vandu, do not cite great vidwans as precedents for committing mistake, because that doesn't still make it. ராமனே வந்து மரத்துலேருந்து ஒளிஞ்சுட்டு வாலியை கொன்னதுன்னா, even though Rama did it, is still going to be viewed as not optimal. And in fact, Valmiki Ramayanathile வந்து when you actually read the entire Valmiki Ramayanam, you will see how Valmiki portrayed Vali's side so beautifully in that one. I read Valmiki Ramayanam when I was about 13 or 14 years old, the entire in its unabridged form. Only it was a transliteration by Sangeeta Bhushanam Srinivasa Iyengar, a fantastic scholar. And I couldn't put it down. It's like an unput-downable book when you read it. In that, for me, I have always viewed that most of the debates that happen about Ramayana or Mahabharata is because people don't. If you read the originals, they have not only anticipated all the questions that you ask today, they have actually anticipated another 100 and already answered it. So, the reason I am highlighting this for students especially is that you have to remember that the raga is greater than all the human beings. And one, if you have the first loyalty to the raga, this has been my philosophy. First, loyalty to the raga. Second, loyalty to the architects of the raga, whether they are the great composers or the great musicians who have handled them. Third, loyalty only to my gurus. So it may look like a blasphemous statement, but luckily I was brilliantly taught by my own father, Chitravina N Ravikiran sir, as importance for both grammar and aesthetics. So today I am not able to accept somebody who will come and say that grammar will detract from aesthetics, because there have been phenomenal artists who have proved that grammar only adds to aesthetics and that does not take away from aesthetics. Okay? I have heard speeches. I'm sure some of you also probably heard about this. Lalgudi Jayaraman sir would always say, லட்சியம் மட்டும் சொல்லிட்டு அலட்சியத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடாது, லக்ஷணத்தை விட்டுட்டு. அதுக்கு ஆப்போசிட் என்னன்னா, லக்ஷணம் லக்ஷணம் சொல்லி அவலட்சணமாகவும் பாடக்கூடாது. ஸோ இந்த ரெண்டும் பிளெண்ட் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு சொன்ன மகாவித்வான்கள் இருந்திருக்கா. And they didn't jump out from Pluto or Uranus, right? They are earthlings. They have walked this planet only and they have proved that it's possible. So, every student having that rigor. Without that rigor in our approach, if we start getting relaxed, I wrote my own notes. I used to do a lot of own notes for myself in my early formative years. This was not meant for anybody else, it was just for myself, it just notes to myself. So in one of those, I wrote long back that they'll creep in on you when you are not even noticed, and they'll become so much before you actually start noticing them. So this was like telling myself to always watch out for flaws. So the point is, without that kind of a quest for, we will not be able to produce Mano Dharma. So it all goes back to the topic. Saveri. That Madhyamam, the Magere is an exceptional prayogam. Default, the Magere has to be there. That particular curve in that Madhyamam, in the Avarohanam, is part of Saveri. If you look at various artists, various human beings, you will imagine them in a particular way, all with their glasses or with their particular type of dress or style, hairstyle, everything. That's the way ragas are. You can't imagine them without those particular adornments as students. And if you do this, it is more Malahari actually. So that is the way Malahari would be. So if we actually say Saveri and render Malahari, then we are not following the Satyam. And if we don't follow Satyam, there is no Dharma if you are actually no Dharma in that. So it keeps leading back to that same point. And the more we are aware, this doesn't mean that people who don't make mistakes. Okay? But at least they have some little hope that they may be able to correct themselves over a period of time. If they keep their eyes open, they may eventually be able to correct themselves. Honestly speaking, I have made a lot of mistakes. If you hear some of my old recordings, I would have made a lot of the mistakes that I talk about today. The only difference that I don't make them today is because I try to keep evolving. I try to keep seeing whether there's a better option for that raga all the time. And this is not only me. I mean, all the great artists have done this. Samangudu Srinivasayar used to speak about this to me. Nedanuri sir, D.K. Patamal, G. All these artists used to share their insights about the raga. Whenever I used to go to their house, they wouldn't be actually asked, what did you have for breakfast? These kind of things. No. More about raga only. Did you listen to this composition? Did you see the charanam that Dikshithar has composed in a Bhairavi Navavarana Kriti? How beautifully that opening of that charanam is, starting from that Nishadam. How conceptualization of that particular raga by this great composer. All these are the kind of topics that people used to talk about, and their generosity is what sort of gets filtered into us, into our systems. And if people did not have that insights of those generations of artists who were aware of how it was by their gurus, and their gurus would have spoken about how their gurus sang that. So you are talking about that the way raga's evolution, you are able to trace it back. And so if you talk to a Samangudu Srinivasayar, you would know about the raga almost 100 years before him also. And that knowledge you keep as your starting point, and then you keep pursuing the raga. Then the raga will reveal slightly, little bit of itself. And that is where it comes to. So, when we look at Apana, we have to be aware of that particular raga's Arohanam Avarohanam, which is the fundamental thing that you are the sequence you need to know. Before the sequence, you need to know what janyam it belongs to, what notes it uses, what is the scale of that raga. And in some cases, the raga can have multiple possibilities. A mohanam can be placed under several scales. Apply your mind to see which of those scales is appropriate for that raga. Mohanam can be placed under Harikambodhi, Shankarabharanam, Vachaspati or Kalyani. So all these ragas use those notes. Now, which among that is most appropriate parent? So the DNA tracing for that Mohanam is something that we need to do. How do we find that out? And how do we find that? What are the tests that we do? What are the lab tests that we need to do to get the correct Janaka raga for that particular scale? This we need to be fit, and then we have to form conclusions. And after a lot of thought, we may be able to conclusion. Most of the books will say it is Harikambodhi, because that is the first among 4 possibilities. Some artists will say Kalyani also. But then we have to see why Harikambodhi or whether Harikambodhi, whether Kalyani, because that will determine how we use that raga. When we sing the notes of Mohanam, we have to see how people are rendering that. And then we have to eliminate. So why cannot Mohanam be part of Harikambodhi? Is something that we have to think about. Can anybody who is not my student answer that question? A lot of people who it's not why.
Sometimes they touch Pratimadima when they do part.
Yes, they render Pratimadimam in Mohanam, and that actually is not legal. That's actually a mistake. Because people render Pratimadimam doesn't make Mohanam belong to Kalyani, because that Pratimadimam there is completely illegal. Supposed to be done at all, right? So that's a good point you are making though. But so then we should see whether there is a legal reason why it still cannot be Harikambodhi, right? And what would that be? Can somebody try and answer that? The Gandharam will be pristine pure Ga. With Chatushrit Rishabham Antara Gandharam Shuddha Madhyamam combination of Harikambodhi and Shankarabharanam, the Gandharam will be plain. You can never oscillate that Gandharam. Whereas Mohanam will oscillate the Gandharam. The moment you oscillate it, you eliminate Harikambodhi and Shankarabharanam from the equation. And then Vachaspati and Kalyani are the possibilities. In that also you have to eliminate Vachaspati. The Daivatam will never be oscillated in Vachaspati because it has a Kaishika Nishadam. Will be the way Vachaspati is rendered. Whereas Mohanam will oscillate the Daivatam. So Vachaspati is thrown out of the equation, so Kalyani is the one remaining, which is correct. Why? Because Kalyani you can oscillate the Rishabham, you can oscillate the Gandharam, you can oscillate the Daivatam in Kalyani, which you can do in Mohanam. And Kalyani sometimes can also use plain variants of these notes. You can do that kind of phrasings in Kalyani also. So Mohanam and Kalyani match. And so this way, when we are able to analyze it and intellectualize it without any emotions tied to this, we will be able to arrive at better conclusions. And when we arrive at better conclusions, we may be able to predict in Mohanam. And this awareness is very important. And some of you may be aware of the fact that there has been a long, heated debate whether Begada belongs to Shankarabharanam scale or Harikambodhi scale. So, this debate has been raging for decades. I happen to be I came somewhere in the middle of that debate only. So there is a very famous Begada CD album in those days where I interviewed Sammangudi Mama about Begada, and he actually spoke brilliantly about the raga. He demonstrated also so many beautiful things in that, and he actually said that it should be under Shankarabharanam. So he spoke entirely in Tamil, and so there was a small segment where I had to speak a little bit in English for the non-Tamil speaking audiences. That I promptly said it has to be under Harikambodi. But because I said this, like in my 20s, and I happened to say this, Mama, but very politely, of course, this became a big debate in that particular point in time when a lot of musicians had their own take on who was right among the two of us and all that. But to tell you, the absolute mindset of Sammangudi sir, he later on went and told V. Subramaniam, யோஜனை பண்ணி பார்த்ததில் ரவிகிரன் சொல்லுது கரெக்டு, நான் ஃபீல் பண்ணுறேன் அப்படின்னு அவர் சொல்லிருந்து வி சுப்ரமணியம் சார் எனக்கு வந்து சொன்னார். And that is the student's hat that many of these legends wore, and he was so he had no reason he didn't need to go to his own student after thought. Again, it's not like he was not mad at me because I went and gifted the same album at home. So that is the same kind of hat that every student needs to have. They can't get emotional about these things. They need to intellectualize. They need to see whether there is rational or rationale particular type of approach. So unless we have that, we cannot do justice to music. And so just for the sake of it, one can do as Vitandavadam and say, I'll sing more Kakal Nishadam and make it Shankarabharanam. I can make it sound like Shankarabharanam. That is just like, a truth or dare kind of game only, that's all. It's not really the way the raga would be. So, Gabha Pada Padani Dabamani Dabamada Gamari Gama Pada Padani Dapa Mabada Pasani Sani Magari Sani Sagari Gama Pani Dapa. Now, when you sing so much of Begada, you see the percentage of Nishadam, which is more prominent in this. It will always be the Kaishika Nishadam, which is rendered more frequently, more number of times. And it's always Kaishika, more Karvai also. The time you spend on that particular note is far, far higher. That is the basis for placing it under Harikambodi. Because Kakal Nishadam is what is called as an Alpaswaram in Begada. Only fast phrases you will have that Kakal Nishadam. Very rarely, very rare, that is a Vishesha Prayogam that especially my Guru Brindama used to sometimes render. So, using a Vishesha Prayogam, you cannot actually, the exception only proves the rule, it doesn't actually negate the rule. So we have to be very aware of that also. We can't cite an exception and say that that is the thing here. In this case, most of the times, that particular exception is only negating the particular rule that Shankarabharanam is the parent for Begada. And so, when we sing that particular raga, I already mentioned about Sariga. Sariga should not be rendered in Begada. Sagari Fani Amagari Fani Sagari Fani Fani He Sagari Fani Samagari Fani Sagari Gamadama Gari Sagari Gama Padapa Padapani the Magama Padapari Sapadani the Magamadama Gari Fani the Sagari Magapa Madaba. Ella Begada is very much there. Nobody would miss Sariga if it is not rendered. And when we do this, the Begada will come through. If you do that, it doesn't make it very nice. Even it could be in a flow. Similarly, in Riti Gola, if you are doing Mano Adharama, Gama ni ni fa ni da ma gare da. Gama ni ni. Ma to ni is a thing. Ni da ni fa ni da ni pa da ni da ma. These kind of phrases sometimes can be a Vishesha Prayogam that has come through the raga. But the Vishesha Prayogam cannot be overdone. If you do that, then it's more and more. If you do that, it is actually Sri Ranjani and not. And also how to sing the Daivatam. How to sing the Rishabham in Riti Gaula. Janani Ninovina Janani Ninovina. If you do that plain re over there, it may sound very beautiful, but that is because of the siddhi of the great artists. But for the raga, Avrohanam in Riti Gaula, it tells you how you are supposed to sing all the kritis in that. That doesn't mean that Avrohanam is the only to sing it. There are prayogas in the raga. But we should know which is the default prayoga, which is the prayoga. So, sometimes when I'm doing that re-plane, it has a color to that. Most of the times, that re will be like that. Nidama is a Vishesha Prayogam. And certain other Mano Dharma things when we do, then Vishesha Prayogams that you will see in Davali in Paras can sometimes use that too. Smarasundaranguni alone will use that. So, Smarasundara Venulakinchute Binavayin Cheyali Venine Padasabhashitsune Smarasundara Javali uses it as a poetic license. That we can't do that. Mano the Javali already used Pandikar sir, now the Mano Adharama we can't use it. So this is why Mano Dharma is not just about understanding things, it's also about exercising this, about what can be taken from those compositions as precedent, what cannot be taken. Song la vara prayogangala vandu Mano Dharmathila use panna mudiyadhu. Because song la or particular context la vandu it may sound okay, but we cannot cite that in Mano Dharma and use it frequently. So these are the kind of things that we need to be aware of. And going back to Riti Gaula, you have to practice. That Rishabham is almost on Ga. So when you are singing it, you have to think Ga to get the Re correctly. If you think Re, you will under achieving that one. If you do that, then that's not true to the thing, spirit of the raga. This is the way to sing that particular phrase. It's not the need at all. It's only ninitha. It's not danisa. These kind of, in fast phrases, we should know what is happening. In other words, the phrase should appear only fast for the listeners. It shouldn't appear like a blur to the singer or the player. The player or the singer should still be able to see every note that the configuration of that particular phrase. Without the awareness of the correct phrasing and the spacing of that particular notes within that phrase, we will not be able to do justice to that. Now, for example, ni ni fa ni fa ni ni fa ni. So that sarisa is much faster over there. That first ni, there is a comma in the first ni. Ni, there is a comma in the first ni shadam. Ni fa ni fa ni will be in double speed. So it's, when you think of it, you should know the configuration of which is a double speed. It doesn't have to be exactly double, but it should be approximately like that. This doesn't mean you sing it with practice ragas with metronome. No. It just means understanding the way that particular phrase is structured so that we do justice. Otherwise, it will be pretty vague when we sing it. So we should be aware of the spacing of certain notes within that phrase. We should be aware of that the speed of certain parts of that phrase is double speed. All this, if you are not aware, we will not render it accurately. So Mano Dharma includes all this. A deep awareness of the way that phrase is presented. And in Raga Alapana, this has been always my pet peeve, that when we sing Alapana, many times the syllabalization of that phrase is not correct, then the phrase will not come through correctly. That means, if you are doing this, takaram is enough over there. That one extra thing is not needed there at all. There that na, because that dapama needs that solidity over there. Otherwise it's pretty floating. Very few artists can pull that off, give weight in that dapama. Most of the artists will need a syllable in that place. So that is okay. It's only the extraordinary artists who can sing that without the syllable there also. But still bring the force. So, the times when we use a lot of extra syllables in alapanas, it will not really sound classy at all. If you do so many nas over there, it's a na actually. Okay. That dhanidapa you can use syllable for every note over there. That's less syllabalization, more classy. Only in the last, that na, if you say, part or feel varo. It's not wrong. I'm not saying it is wrong in this case. This particular instance will still be okay only, but something classier means less syllabalization. And wrong syllabalization like re. I've always told a lot of students, do not use re when you sing alapanas. அப்படின்னா ரீன்னு ஆல்ரெடி ஒரு ஸ்வரம் இருக்கு. அந்த ஸ்வரம் எங்கே இருக்கு? அங்கே இருக்காது. சட்ஜத்தை பாடி ரீ அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ரொம்ப நேரத்துக்கு அதை இழுத்து completely it sounds very அப்படின்னா நான் யூஸ் பண்ணலாமே. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரியான சென்சிட்டிவிட்டி ஹேஸ் டு பி தேர் ஃபார் மனோதர்மம். இல்லைன்னா அந்த சென்சிட்டிவிட்டி இல்லைன்னா we will not do justice to Manodharma. We have to see, okay, what syllables, and today a lot of artists are using Ra. This Ra is a very harsh sounding syllable. Better to avoid Ra. Ta, na, a. As much as possible, the syllable should sound pleasing on the ears. It should not be a strain. அப்படின்னா அப்படின்னாலே நல்லா கேட்கும். Similarly, there are certain frivolous sounding syllables that should also be avoided. If you are a Madhuradhwani, you cannot be singing la in thing. அவர் மதுரமணியருடைய சித்தியே வேற. அவர் மகான். அவர் எதை பாடித்தினாலும் அதில் அப்படியே இருக்கும். அது அவருடைய ஒரு சித்தி. அதை நாம் பாடித்தினா அது ரொம்ப ஒரு கிட்டத்தட்ட ஒரு ஜெமினி சர்க்கஸில் வர அந்த ரிலீஃப் காமெடி மாதிரி தான் இருக்கும் அது. ஸோ அதெல்லாம் ஷுட் பி அவேர். வாட் syllables you even the vowels when we sing alapanas. எல்லாம் அதான் சொல்லியிருக்கேன் இல்லையா? இது என்ன இங்கேருந்து ஒரு 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 ஆங்கிள்லேருந்து அந்த அகாரத்தை சொல்லித்தின்னா இல்லை அப்படின்னு ஒரு கால்கேட் டூத் பேஸ்ட் அட்வர்டைஸ்மெண்ட் மாதிரி சொல்லித்தின்னா இதெல்லாம் வவலைசேஷனே ராங். அதெல்லாம் மனோதர்மம் கிடையாது. நார் இஸ் இட் ஸ்டைல். தே ஆர் ஜஸ்ட் பேசிக் வீக்னஸஸ். அந்த வீக்னஸஸ் எலிமினேட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு அகாரம் ப்ராக்டிஸ். lot of akaram practice has to be done. If the akaram is strong, these kind of mistakes won't happen. I'm not making these points for any senior vidwans or something. These are all for students. So this is no for artist or anything at all. It is just general observations that we have to be aware and we have to work. It is not just awareness. Armchair geniuses are there plenty. Unless that is translated into delivery, there is no point to that. Na, the syllables are fine to use. But naraya akaram paadlam. It is like an example, rather, for this is like your ability to form longer and longer sentences properly. எல்லாம் ஷார்ட் சென்டென்சஸாகவே 10,000 சிலபிள்ஸை யூஸ் பண்ணியிருந்தேன்னா ஐ லைக் த கேட். ஸோ அது இட் இஸ் நாட் கோயிங் டு பி இனஃப். த மியூசிக் ஹேஸ் டு பி டேக்கன் டு த நெக்ஸ்ட் லெவல். மீன்ஸ் யூ நீட் டு பி ஏபிள் டு ஃபார்ம் longer meaningful sentences is right punctuation. அகாரத்திலே punctuation முடியும். Punctuation is there, force is there, power is there, everything can be done. But this doesn't mean that I didn't use a na in the end of it. So, Manodharmathila idallam it's part of it. So, the Manodharma கரெக்டாக வரணும்னால் அதுக்கு ப்ராக்டிஸ் நிறையா வேணும். நிறையா ப்ராக்டிஸ் இருந்தால் மனோ தர்மமாகவே வரும். இல்லைன்னா எல்லாமே அதர்மமாக ஏன்னா இது லாட் ஆஃப் தட் இஸ் ஆல்சோ வீக்னஸ் பிகாஸ் வி ஹேவன்ட் ஒர்க்ட். ஒரு தரம் மகாவித்வான் யாருன்னு சொல்கிறேன், சேஷகோபால் ஆற்றுக்கு என்கிட்ட கேஷுவலாக பேசிட்டு இருந்தார். க்ளீனாக சொன்னார், மியூசிஷியன் அப்படின்னு இஃப் யூ ஆர் புட்டிங் காலிங் யுவர் செல்ஃப், இஃப் யூ ஆர் டேகிங் யுவர் செல்ஃப் ஆஸ் அ மியூசிஷியன், அட்லீஸ்ட் ஒரு 12-14 மணி நேரம் ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணாமல் எதுக்கு மியூசிஷியன் கூப்பிட்டுக்கணும் அப்படின்னு. அது சர்வசாதாரணமாக மியூசிஷியன் சொல்லிட்டு அவ்வளோ அப்படின்றது அவர் த வே ஆஃப் லைஃப். அவருக்கு ஜென்யூன் சர்ப்ரைஸ், மியூசிஷியன் சொல்லிட்டு இவ்வளோ கூட பண்ணாமல் எதுக்கு அந்த டேக் எதுக்கு அப்படின்னு. ஸோ the point is that unless we work, we will not do things. That work alone, the strong, sincere work ethics alone can actually result in some delivery. And if the delivery can be good, then our mano itself will be correct. Otherwise, we'll get the same kind of stale ideas, we'll just keep recycling, or we would have created a formula with which we'll be just be running our careers. இப்போ சில ஆர்டிஸ்ட்லாம் வந்து சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல்லாக அது எப்போ எந்த கச்சேரியில் பார்த்தாலும் அதே ஃபார்முலா இருக்கும். ஆனால் அது கேட்குறதுக்கு நல்லா இருக்கும். நத்திங், ஐ எம் நாட் சேயிங் இட்ஸ் ராங், பட் இட்ஸ் ஸ்டில் கோயிங் டு பி a limit kind of approach, because one comfort zone that they would have actually got into, and they would keep that, okay, why argue with success அப்படின்னு ஒரு philosophy வந்துட்டு அதிலே தான் போகணும்னு தோணும் நம்மளுக்கு. There are two aspects to this, right? The manas and the dharma. Being aware of the dharma is one thing. Practicing the dharma is very, very important. Practicing it a lot is very important for the manas to actually come up with correct ideas. The creativity part of it, for it to actually be wide and deep. A lot of skill has to be there. Illana enna manas vandu eppovume it is very, very protective of us. It will keep telling you, no, that one, don't try that one, don't try that one, sing to this one, think this phrase, this is safe for you, this is better for you. Abdine the manas will keep telling us. Yes. So, I'm saying all this practical experience itself. Now, stage lay, sometimes if I'm not in, rather go and play something that I may be particularly comfortable that day. I won't step out of that comfort zone. And this can happen to any, because whether you're an artist or a sports person, there are days. எனக்கு யாரும் இந்த சங் சாம்ராட் அப்படின்னு ஒரு டைட்டில் 18 வயசில் கொடுத்தா, நான் ஐ ஆல்வேஸ் கீப் சேயிங் இட்ஸ் நாட் லைக் தட் அட் ஆல், பிகாஸ் ஐ புட் இட் இன் மை திஸ் திங் பயோடேட்டா வெரி ஃபெய்த்ஃபுல்லி அண்ட் ஆல் that's different issue, because I feel sentimental about that particular title. But you don't feel like Sangeet most of the days. Most of them will feel like Sangeet some rat only. So, because that art is so high, it's like so brilliant that you cannot afford to anything for granted. But what happens with good work ethics and passionate practice, this doesn't mean mechanical practice. It still needs passion when you practice. Getting mechanical, then you stop practice for some time, go do something else and come back when you still feel a little more. You have to be able to feel the mental freshness when you practice. So, doing that will actually decrease the probability of failure, increase the probability of success. So, we are all working for probabilities in life. So, how do we decrease probability of failure? How do we increase probability of better Mano Dharma? Better ideas that the actually say, okay, try this out. Why don't you try this out? 2 days back, I was actually talking to the great Tamil maestro Haridwaramangalam Palanivel sir. So he told me one particular sentence which is very relevant here. Thambi, கடவுள் வந்து ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் ஐடியாவை கொடுக்குறார், அதை நீ ஸ்டேஜில் வாசிக்காமல் போயிட்டீங்கன்னா அது கடவுளுக்கே செய்கிற துரோகம். அது கடவுளே அதை பற்றி ரொம்ப டிசப்பாயிண்டட். உனக்கு இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஐடியா கொடுத்தேனே, இது கூட நீ ஷேர் பண்ணாமல் நீ எதுக்கு வந்து இந்த தொழிலை பண்ணிட்டுருக்க அப்படின்னு அவர் கேட்பார். அப்படின்ற மாதிரி ஒரு சென்டிமெண்ட் அவர் சொன்னார். ஸோ த ஐடியா, there is a reason that idea has come to you. That is for you to sit and try to work hard to execute that idea, make it reality. So if you don't do that, then you are doing yourself a disservice first, and you are doing a disservice to your art, you are doing disservice to God who gave that idea. So we all have to work for this. Now the reason I'm highlighting this is that creativity is a very funny thing. There are days when your mind can have a block, you won't even feel comfortable next phrase. ஏதோ ஒன்று வாசிச்சுட்டு இருப்போம். பட் அதுக்கு வந்து the only way you ride your form on those days is to have heard a lot of different great artists. And when you hear a lot of different great artists, you cannot randomly be hearing them. First, you should have heard a lot of your guru. You should have formed a proper style. You should have formed a recognizable style over a few years. After that, if you listen to other artists, other styles, other schools, it will have a positive, inspirational impact on you. If you hear various styles before you have formed your own style along a particular path, then you will just be nothing more than a fruit salad with one apple here, one orange there, another this thing here, there, a little bit banana there, and one small little cashew nut from some other corner. This is the way you. Okay? So, I always advocated that your style where everything is blended and there should be a seamless quality to that particular style. The ingredients can change, but it should be seamless. So, that you listen to a lot of different artists after a particular stage, then you will particularly be aware of how many ways you can render that particular raga. If your mobility is great on one day, you may be inspired by an artist whose mobility was not great, but still that artist rose to great heights. If your mobility is very good, you may be, your manas part of it will actually be able to give you a different kind of creativity on that particular day, where you are able to be a little more adventurous. So the manas has to be conditioned by a lot of listening. Good quality, purposeful listening. Not like this listening, but like this listening. We have to be very keen when we hear great artists. What are they doing there? How are they developing this phrase in this raga? How are we doing this? So a lot of people today try to do a formula. They just write down the raga phrases, practice it a few times, and then they it in the concert. And when you do that kind of thing, it is okay if you are like a small level student who is just in Arangetram. Even then, if you are not heard enough, then your ears wouldn't be really good. So your mind also won't be very good. So even if you sing the correct phrases, they'll still sound contrived. So we have to actually listen. The more we listen, the better our mind will be. So in other words, ears are the key first. From ears, it goes to the brain. And from the brain, it has to come to your voice or to your hands. And the better we are able to do this, the better our Mano Dharma will be. And when we are doing this kind of Mano Dharma, we have to filter out, again, all the grammar rules that I mentioned in the raga. There are certain artists, we should still listen with a critical thinking. Faculty should be there. Listen like that, then we'll make sure that we are only taking the best qualities of those artists. There is something called this Raja Hamsa in Indian mythology. It will only, if you give milk mixed with water, it will drink all the milk and leave all the water in the... Yes. So that quality, in my childhood, my elders used to say, you should be Raja Hamsa, you should take good things from anyone. It's like the same Vinno kind of thing only, but in a different... Hamsanadam, Hamsadhvani. அது சரியா இல்லைன்னா ஹிம்சநாதம் ஹிம்சனி எல்லாம். So before I proceed further, are there any questions? Anybody would like to ask anything or share any thoughts? Yeah. Chalo.
You told the ragatoda parent identify. It's a very important thing. My doubt is that regardless of the parent, அதுக்கு ஒரு framework நீங்க செட் பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. இப்போ சரிங்க பாடப்படாது அப்படினு சொல்லிருக்கீங்க சார். So whatever the parent that we think is correct or wrong, இது மாறாது இல்லையா சார்? இந்த the way that we see the ragam doesn't change.
Very correct actually. So when I said the scale and the sequence of the notes, The scale என்றது நம்மளுக்கு only to know that பேகடாவில் இப்போ we cannot sing a சுத்த ரிஷபம். அந்த அளவுக்கு தான் scale is important. So what notes are not there in that அப்படின்னு தெரியறதுக்கு scale. இப்போ for example பம நீஸ் அப்படின்னா 2 possibilities are there immediately. What are the 2? Exactly. So இப்போ ஸ்கேல் தெரிஞ்சதுன்னா கரெக்டாக பாடுவோம் நம்ம. We won't slip from one to the other. That is the reason, that is the extensionality of the scale. And அதுக்கு மேலே அதுக்கு நம்ம இம்பார்ட்டன்ஸ் கொடுக்க தேவையில்ல. அதுக்கு நெக்ஸ்ட்டு sequence of notes. Now again, that brings to a very interesting point. You can sit down. It brings to a very interesting point. The sequence. Sari ga ma pa ma da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa Saurashtra. ஆனால் நடைமுறையில் நிறைய சாங்ஸில் 15 பாடுறோம், கம 15 பாடுறோம். ஸ்ரீ கணபதி நீ சேவிம்பர கமபதி நீதபமரே. அது நானும் இப்போ பாடினேன். நீங்களும் ஒரு எம்ஏல இருக்கிற ஒரு ஆசையிலையோ ஏதோ நீங்கள் தலையும் ஆட்டினீங்க இல்லையா? ஆனால் அந்த கமபத இஸ் நாட் தேர் இன் தட் ராகா. ஸோ கரெக்டாக அந்த டிலிஜென்ஸ் எடுத்து பாடணும். அந்த தட் இஸ் அ சீக்வன்ஸ் பார்ட் ஆஃப் இட். அதுக்கப்புறம் அந்த கமபம தான் எப்படி பாடுறது? கமபம மத்தியமத்தில் அந்த கமக்கம் வேணும். பம நீத பமகரே அதை பாடுறது நெக்ஸ்ட்டு. ஸோ தட் மீன்ஸ் what notes are oscillated in the raga, what are not oscillated in the raga, that is the third part of it. And then you should also be aware of the key phrases of that raga, which you actually mentioned. So no matter what, you should be aware of those key phrases. And இதில் எல்லா ராகத்துக்கும் key phrase இருக்காது. There are certain sequence based ragas. Those ragas live or die by the sequence. இப்போ for example, a lot of times Sari ga ma da sa sa da ni pa ma ga re sa enta vedukondu raghava panta me o raghava enta vedukondu raghava is there. So this is what raga? Saraswati Manohari, right? So sa da ni pa, if you by mistake sing sa ni da ni pa ma ga re sa sa ri ga ma da ni da ni pa ma ga re sa, if you sing a nishadam there, does anyone know, who is not my student, does anyone know what raga is that? Sa ri ga ma da sa ni da ni pa ma ga re sa. It is a raga called Kokiladhwani. తొలి నేను చేసిన పూజ ఫలమీలగే. இந்த சதனிபா வச சானிதனிபா is all that is the distinction between these two ragas. Otherwise the gamakas are nearly the same in that entire context. So here the raga identity is so dependent on the accuracy of the sequence. Whereas, recently I was discussing Bhushavali versus Kambodhi, right, in one of the camp that we were doing. Sarigama padasa sanida pamagare sa. Sarigama padasa sanida pamagare sa. Bhushavali, adukku pratimadhyamam vechidana. Forget that Kambodhi uses Kakal Nishadam, it's a different part of the thing. But in the basic sequence, this is a thing, right? Whereas Gama pada sa ni da pa ma pada sa ni da pa ma pada re sa ni da pa ma ga re. Bhushavali, you have to keep highlighting the pada sa ni da. Whereas in Kambodhi, the personality of the raga is so vast and so strong. Gama pada ni da pada ni and pada sa ni da ma pada. That Padanidani, if you use also Kambodhi, you won't be lost. Whereas which as a raga, its personality is not that. It will get complete. You keep using if you do that, then that raga won't be surviving. So you see, every raga has a personality. And for the Mano Dharma to be accurate, you should respect, you should be aware of the raga. You should really develop a friendship with the raga. We have to have a kind of an intimate equation with that particular raga for us to understand what's the personality of that raga. And only then the Mano Dharma will be justifiable. And when you talk about personality, it also includes a knowledge of whether it is a delicate raga, whether it's an assertive raga, whether it's a majestic raga, whether it's a sublime raga, whether it's a tranquil raga. All these aspects also come into play. Not just whether it's a sad raga, happy raga, angry raga. That's not the only thing that we should be aware of. Or ஆகிரி அப்படின்னு எடுத்ததுன்னா அப்படின்னா அதுதான் அந்த ராகத்துக்கு உண்டான மனோ தர்மமே அப்படி இருக்கு. இப்படிலாம் பாடிட்டு இருக்கிறது எடுத்த உடனே அது வரக்கூடாது. அது மனோ தர்மம் கிடையாது. அந்த ஃப்ரேஸ் வரலாம், அது எந்த டைமில் கொஞ்சம் அப்படின்னு ஏதாவது கொஞ்சம் ஃபிலிக்ரி ஒர்க் எப்போது பண்ணோன்னா தட்ஸ் வாட் டைம் கேன் தட் கைண்ட் ஆஃப் ஃப்ரேசிங் ஈவன் அப்பேர் இந்த ராகான்றது ஒரு பேசிக் அவேர்னஸ் இருக்கணும். அதுக்கு அந்த பர்சனாலிட்டி தெரியணும். அதே மாதிரி ஒரு தேவகாந்தாரியில் ஏதோ நம்மளுக்கு தான் வாய்ஸில் கொஞ்சம் இருக்குன்னு தேவையில்லாத பிற்காலம் அதில் பாடக்கூடாது. அந்த ராகத்தினுடைய பர்சனாலிட்டி வே டு பி அவேர். இந்த ஃபீல் வரணும் தேவகாந்தரினா. வேறஸ் ஆரபின்னா அசர்டிவ் ஃபீல். அந்த ஃபீல் வரணும். ஸோ அந்த ராகத்தினுடைய பர்சனாலிட்டி அதில் யூ கான்ட் பி சிங்கிங் விம்பி ஃப்ரேசஸ் இன் ஆரபி. அப்படின்னு ஆரபியில் பாடிச்சுன்னா ரொம்ப சுமாராக கேட்கும். மனோ தர்மம் அப்படின்னு வந்ததுன்னா அது அந்த ராக பர்சனாலிட்டி வி ஹவ் டு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட். அண்ட் அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி மனசு போகணும். அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி அந்த தர்மத்தை பண்ணுறது நம்மளுக்கு skill set should allow us. So unless we are aware of those ragas as personalities, and unless we really try to understand them like almost we try to understand people, we won't be able to do justice to that raga. And there are certain ragas which are fragile ragas. இப்போ ஒரு வராளியில் the raga is fragile. It cannot handle heavy weight kind of sangatis. Certain parts, certain times, certain measures, certain doses. So, ஒரு sensitivity இல்லாமல் we cannot handle varali because the raga will collapse under the weight of our own Mano Dharma. So like this we have to feel for the raga. If that feeling is not there for the raga, bhava is not about just doing whenever Rama அப்படின்னு சாகித்யம் வரைச்செல்லாம் கை கூப்பி தான் அது பாவம் கிடையாது. ஸ்ரீராம பதம் ஆஹா அப்படி அது that is not just bhava. Bhava is about feeling for the raga first. You have to feel. Raga is an abstract thing. You have to feel for that. If you are able to feel for that, then your bhava for the sahityam also can improve sometimes. That doesn't mean always. You still have to work for the sahityam, but you have to feel for the raga. And the ragathila feeling irukano. That's sangeeta bhavam. Sahityam you talk so much, right? But sangeeta bhavam you have to first develop. Adu pannithuna, then we'll be able to do this. So the scale, sequence, oscillated or unoscillated notes, forceful notes, graceful notes, we have to know. Then we should also know what are the key phrases of that raga. Key phrases like Edukula Kambo, they only thrive on key phrases. They won't thrive on developmental kind of approach. Whereas some other ragas like Shankarabharanam, Keeravani, many of those ragas, you can develop it note by note many times. And then you should know what notes you can start a phrase in and what notes you can end a phrase in. Start a phrase in ni. Ni dabba bagari sanida sari அப்படினா சுமார் அது தப்பு. Get it sanida அப்படின்னு ஒரு phrase நம்ம வந்து பாடுறது வந்து it won't be so appropriate for Arabi. Magari sanida better. Sanida magari sanida. Dabba magari sanida. Magari sanida. Magari sanida. Ti sanida is enough. So when you're doing sequential kind of development also, you should know what sequences can be used, cannot be used. Arabi has Sanidabha Magarisa. That doesn't mean that you can start a phrase with all those notes. So these kind of awareness we need to have. And then which notes can be given karves and which notes cannot be given karves. And that also happens right from the Arohanam stage. Many times I think when artists develop some raga, if they don't do it correctly, my first thought comes to me that they have not even understood the Arohanam of the raga. They have not understood the Murchana of the raga. Sariga Bapa Madani Sani Dapa Sahana Sani Dapa. If you sing itself, then you are wrong. That means you are not got to that first stage itself. And because you are not got there, your application of the formula also is completely wrong many times when you sing the actual. Sahana may use neither the all this you can use. But you can never use. So when you sing Arohanam itself, you have to sing and sometimes when they give karve in unnecessary notes. That is not Pantuvarali Kamavardhini at all. So no karve. And some people when they sing Sanidapa Magaresa, then Ma Kiran they get the Tavelama. Sanidapa Magaresa, Harikambadi. Gaba Padani Sanidapa Magaresa. Regama Padani Sanidapa Maga. தேவையே இல்லாது. இந்த மாதிரி உங்கள் ஆக்சன்ட்ஸ் கொடுக்குறது இதெல்லாம் கொடுத்ததுன்னா what happens? Mano Adharama gets compromised. And we may think that I am making too many micro points and I am nitpicking. But if we don't remember that there's a huge difference between micro and minor, we will never be able to produce good art. Micro is not to be confused with minor. Micro is major in art. That is why it's called fine art. The fineness of the art is the fineness of the particle. It's small, 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 get all this. Nano தாண்டி இப்போலாம் எவ்வளவோ இருக்குல்ல. All the micros, nanos, அதுக்கும் கீழே வந்து there are so many things, right? So on the you have to keep going down to that and seeing, zoom in, see that. If you are able to see that with clarity, then you are a finer artist. So that is what is important for Mano Dharma. And also another point which I have to touch upon, in Alapanas, seeing from 80s only, more, many times, it used to be there a little bit before, but now it has become a little more, which is to give unnecessarily long karves at the end of phrases. People have lost the art of short finishes in phrases. That's a short finish on that. There is no need for the elongation. Is not even needed. That's not the correct Mano Dharma over there. So these kind of lack of clarity in the way that phrase ending is will also compromise Mano Dharma. Arohana Kramam is fine in raga like Panturali. All this is fine. There the short Daivatam is far smarter. So the smart way to end phrases is very, very important. Otherwise, we are not doing justice to the raga. We are actually singing phrases which are actually weird sounding, but now because so many people are singing it, it almost is impossible to recognize that that's not a correct way to sing it. So, if you listen to some very good artists, they wouldn't be giving elongated carveys and unnecessary notes in their. These are all things we need to be aware of. So the better thing is we have to go to gurus who have a deep and broad vision of the raga for us to even start approaching the raga correctly. So these are all important for students and rasikas also. நீங்களும் வந்து ஆர்டிஸ்ட் என்ன பாடி ஜஸ்ட் பிகாஸ் அவள் கொஞ்சம் ப்ரெசன்டபுளாக இருக்கா அப்படின்றதுனால வந்து நம்ம எல்லாத்தையும் வந்து டாலரேட் பண்ணி தேவையே கிடையாது. கொஞ்சம் கிரிட்டிக்கலாக கேட்டு ஓகே இந்த ஃப்ரேஸில் நீங்கள் பாடினீங்களே சார் அப்படின்னு அவளை லைட்டாக கேட்கலாம். இது இப்படி அதெல்லாம் கொஞ்சம் critical conversations can happen. I was really fortunate to grow up among some brilliant rasikas who really developed and almost invisibly persuaded artists to better quality music. In fact, Oliti Venkateshwarulu sir once wrote about a rasika in one of his articles. He wrote a phenomenal article about how that particular rasika actually shaped even his own singing in so many ways. This is I'm very, very happy to perform for the discerning rasikas of Chennai and so many cities. எந்த ஆடியன்ஸும் தேவத்தை மாதிரி தான் ட்ரீட் பண்ணணும்னு எங்கள் அப்பா எனக்கு ரொம்ப சின்ன வயசில் சொன்னார். ஸோ அது உண்மைதான். பட் ரசிகத்துவத்தில் வந்து நம்மளும் வந்து இன்னும் வேறு சில திங்ஸ்லாம் கேட்கணும் அப்படின்றது we have to make that effort. Only I have been sharing some thoughts today. So any other questions? Naraval, very, very good point. Thank you for bringing it. Naravala Mano Dharma is very important. Why? Because to me, Naraval is actually the most important aspect of Mano Dharma itself. Why would I actually say that? There are two reasons. One is that it is the junction of melody, rhythm and lyrics. The only improvisation which has all three. Second thing, it is the point of convergence between the creativity of the composer and the creativity of the performer. So these two reasons make Naraval the most important part of Mano Dharma. And on the Mano Dharma thila vandu Naraval pannacha the dharma begins even before you start the Naraval actually. The line that you choose itself will tell you. அது கரெக்டான லைனை வந்து if you don't choose, then it is not a great dharma. పొట్టులో బోలను పొట్ట కై పొగడి ஒரு லைன் எடுத்து அதில் போய் நரவல் பண்ணி நம்மளுக்கு தான் வந்து சக்கரவாகத்தில் ரொம்ப க்ரியேட்டிவிட்டி இருக்குது அப்படின்னு வந்து அதை எடுத்து அந்த லைனோடைய சென்டிமெண்ட்டே புரிஞ்சுக்காமல் ஒரு நெகட்டிவ் சென்டிமெண்ட்டில் வந்து ஃபஸ்ட்டு சூஸ் பண்ணி அந்த வேர்ட்ஸும் வந்து கேட்குறதுக்கு கொஞ்சம் ஒரு ஈஸியும் அந்த இயர்ஸாக இல்லாமல் இருக்கிற ஒரு திங்கில் வந்து நரவெல்லாம் பண்ணக்கூடாது. அண்ட் இதுதான் இன்ஃபேக்ட் லாட் ஆஃப் ஆர்டிஸ்ட் நிதிச்சால சுகமாவில் வந்து மமத பந்தனயூத்த இந்த மமதா 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 கமபதனி மமத்த தலித பதனி மமத்தா இப்படின்னே ஸ்வரத்தை போட்டுட்டு நரவல் பண்ணிச்சு எல்லாத்துலையும் மமதா மமதான்னு பண்ணிட்டு இதெல்லாம் வந்து it is a nice line melodically. It's a beautiful place. There's nothing wrong with the melodic part of that. But it's a lyrical theme, the sentiment of that particular line is not this thing. Whereas an artist like GNB used to do it in Sumati Tyagaraja. Similarly, when you choose Naravel line, you should not choose a line that is not complete. Some of the most famous lines that we actually hear Naravel, Paramatmudu Jiva Jivatmudu, Padinalugu Logamuluku, but the sentence is not even complete. It has to go to the next line. அந்த மாதிரி லைன்ஸில் நரவல் பண்ணக்கூடாது. ஒரு half line and do Naravel. Nor can you sing 8 Avarthanams as your Naravel line and sing Harikatha. அது ஃபுல்லாக பாடிட்டு அதே ஒரு 30 தரம் அது எல்லாத்தையும் சேர்த்து பாடக்கூடாது. ஸோ the way you choose. In particular, this particular composition, I have for long preferred Paripurna Nikalanka Niravadhi Sukhadayaka. Equally beautiful line, but complete in itself. So, like that we have to choose correctly. Even Jatarupa Nibachela in Deva Deva Kalayami, the better line is actually the last line. Strita Vibhuda Sala Shri Padmanabha. That's a complete line. Jatarupa is by itself, it doesn't finish. It has to go to the next part for it to actually finish. Bhulaka Vaikuntram actually வந்து completely wrong. அது கேட்கறதுக்கு தான் நல்லா இருக்கே தவிர அந்த லைன் இஸ் நாட் கம்ப்ளீட். భూలోక వైకుంఠం ఇది అని నీలోన నీవు ఉప్పొంగచ్చు, அதுக்கப்புறம் இட் கோ ஸ்ரீலோ, ஆல் தீஸ் திங்ஸ் சிந்த தீர்ச்சு என்னாலோ மட்டும் இட் இஸ் தட் லைன் இஸ் நாட் கம்ப்ளீட். த தாட் இஸ் நாட் கம்ப்ளீட். த சென்டென்ஸ் இஸ் நாட் கம்ப்ளீட். அது மட்டும் இல்லை, பட் ஈவன் சரியாகவே பாடித்தனோ கூட வந்து அது தட் ஆவர்த்தனம் இஸ் நாட் கம்ப்ளீட். பதம் பிரிக்கிறது வந்து கம்ப்ளீட்லி ராங். அதை நம்ம நிறைய தடவை வந்து ஞானமோசகராத கீர்த்தனம் படித்து ஞானமோசகராத அஜானத்தை தான் நம்ம கேட்டுருக்கோம். நீ சரி சட்டிவே அனித்ய அங்கே கொடுக்குற ஆக்சென்ட்டில் அனித்ய கல்யாணின்னு வருதும். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரிலாம் பண்ணக்கூடாது. அண்ட் நம்ம நரவல் பண்ணிச்சு அந்த சாகித்யம் ஸ்பஷ்டமாக கேட்காம ஏதோ செக்கோஸ்லோவாக்கியன் லாங்குவேஜில் பாடுற மாதிரி பாடக்கூடாது. ஸோ அந்த ப்ரொனன்சியேஷன் பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதயக பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதயக பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதயக பரிபூர்ண. ஓரளவுக்கு எல்லா ஸ்கில்ஸும் கொண்டு வந்தே வந்து சாகித்யத்தையும் கரெக்டாக பாடலாம். This also brings to the other side of it. அது ட்ராமா பண்ண தேவையில்லை. அதோ சாகித்யத்தை ரொம்ப பண்ணுறேன் அப்படின்றதுக்கு ப்ரொடக்ஷன், ஹாலிவுட் ப்ரொடக்ஷன் தட் வி ஆர் ப்ரொனன்சிங் வெல். இட் ஷுட் பி ஆர்கானிக்காக கரெக்டாக ப்ரொனன்ஸ் பண்ணி ஒழுங்காக பாடணும். பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க அப்படின்னு we don't have to do one thing out there. I like Meenalochini Bachalmochini. I particularly like that one. நிறைய பேர் மதுராபுரியில் கூட பாடணும், நானும் வாசிச்சிருக்கேன். பட் ஐ லைக் தட் ஒன் பெட்டர். அதே மாதிரி மாமா மீனாட்சி ஆல்சோ ஐ யூஸ் டு டூ இன் ஷாமே. பட் மெனி டைம்ஸ் ஐ ஆல்சோ டன் ஹேமரத்ன பரணதாரிணி குரு குருதகரிணி ஹேமரத்ன பரணதாரிணி. இதெல்லாம் வந்து நான் நிறைய தடவை வாத்தியத்தில் வாசிக்கிறதுனால நான் எங்கே ஸ்வராட்சரம்லாம் யூஸ் பண்ணுறேன். அதெல்லாம் வந்து நிறைய பேருக்கு வந்து ஈவன் ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸுக்கே கூட தெரிஞ்சிருக்காது சில டைம்ஸ். பட் அதெல்லாம் நிறைய இன்டெலிஜென்ட் ஸ்கோப் இருக்குது. ஸோ அதுக்கப்புறம் பல்லவி நேரவெல்லாம் பண்ணிச்ச எகெயின் Naraval itself is very important unless you have understood. It's a clear indicator of whether you have understood the structure of the song correctly. Syllables எங்கெங்கயோ தள்ளி தள்ளி பாடுறது, இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு அக்ஷரம் தள்ளி பாடுற 1 out of 12 is fine. That is style, that is skill. படி பூண நிஷ்கலங்க இப்படிலாம் பாடுறது தப்பு. That means you are killing the structure of the song. பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகத பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகத படி பூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகத படி பூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகத பரி பூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க. நிறைய விதமான நிரவல் பண்ணலாம். பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதய பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதய பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க. ஸோ ஒதுக்கலாக பாடுறது, ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக பாடுறது, phrases, all these things you can do, lot of things. But you should be able to do Naraval in just one note also, or just 2 notes also. Or just for initial practice, at least you should practice like that. Paripurna Nishkalanka Niravadi Sukadayaka Paripurna Nishkalanka Niravadi Sukadayaka. மினிமலிஸ்டிக்காகவும் நல்ல பாவமாக பாடுறதுக்கு தெரியணும். பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி சுகதய பரிபூர்ண நிஷ்கலங்க நிரவதி. ஸோ லயிச்சு பாடுறதுக்கு ஒரு சைலன்ஸ் க்ரியேட் பண்ண தெரியணும். நரவல்ல எல்லாத்துலேயுமே சைலன்ஸ் க்ரியேட் பண்ண தெரியும். ஒரு மகா வித்வான், ரொம்ப எவால்வ்டு ஆர்டிஸ்ட் will be able to create silence in sound and sound in silence. அது ரொம்ப ஹையஸ்ட் ஸ்டேட். அந்த சங்கீதத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஹையஸ்ட் ரெசல்யூஷன் அப்படின்னா இதுதான். இஃப் யூ கேன் கிரியேட் சைலன்ஸ் இன் சவுண்ட் அண்ட் சவுண்ட் இன் சைலன்ஸ், that is like the highest form of evolution. சப்தத்தில் நிஷப்தம், நிஷப்தத்தில் சப்தம். அதை க்ரியேட் பண்ண தெரிஞ்சதுன்னா அது அப்படி ஒன்று இருக்குன்றதே நம்மளுக்கு தொழிலாக வச்சு படித்துனா அதெல்லாம் நம்மளுக்கு தோணாது. பட் அதை தான் அந்த மாதிரி இப்படி இருக்குது. இதுக்கெல்லாம் I used to go away to Benares and some of these places when I was young. I used to go off on retreats and only me, and cell phone kadayadhu, email onnu kadayadhu polam. I used to go and spend the time in isolation, solitude, and just me, my instrument, sometimes my books, my thoughts, my reading, writing, all those things. It used to be like completely to know. அந்த மாதிரி டைம் ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணிச்சு ஏதாவது சில ட்ரூத்ஸ் அங்கே அப்படி ஒரு சைலன்ஸும் இருக்கும். இட் வாஸ் நாட் த ஆக்சுவல் பனாரஸ், பட் இட் வாஸ் அவே ஃப்ரம் பனாரஸ் இன் அ பர்டிகுலர் ரிட்ரீட் வேர் இட் வாஸ் இஃப் ஐ ஆர் சிட்டிங் ஹியர் டூயிங் ஹியர். ஸோ தட்ஸ் அ கைண்ட் ஆஃப் திங். நாட் ஈவன் அ பேர்ட் வுட் மேக் அ நாய்ஸ். அந்த அளவுக்கு சைலன்ஸ் இருக்கும். இப்போ அப்படிலாம் ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணிச்சு தான் சங்கீதத்தினுடைய ஒரு நுட்பங்களே நம்மளுக்கு கொஞ்சம் கொஞ்சம் ஏதாவது தெரியும். ஸோ எனிவே, vast subject, but why I am saying is Naraval is very important. அந்த மனோதர்மம் அதை கரெக்டாக இருக்கணும். பல விதங்களில் நரவல் பண்ண தெரியணும். சேம் வித் தானம் ஆல்சோ லாட் ஆஃப் ராங் சிலபலைசேஷன்ஸ் ஆர் creeping in itself as a system. A lot of people don't even know that you can't say two nasal syllables together in Tanam. Nom 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 tada அப்படின்றதுலாம் வந்து ஒரு தானமே கிடையாது. You can say tom several times, but you can't say no several times successively. Tom 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 tom. Okay. Nom 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 அப்படின்லாம் பாடித்தேன்னா ரொம்ப சும்மா. அது நம்ம இன்டர்பிரிட்டேஷனில் சொல்கிறோம். அது நம்ம வந்து வி வாண்ட் டு ரிலேட்டட் டு த பரபிரமம், ஸோ ஆனந்தம் இதெல்லாம் நம்ம சொல்கிறோம். பட் அப்படியே பாடித்து நான் கேட்கறதுக்கு நல்லா இருக்காது. ஆனந்தம் ஆனந்தமான அப்படின்னு அதுக்கு கீர்த்தனமே கம்போஸ் பண்ணிட்டு பாடிடலாம். அதுக்கு தானத்துக்கு உண்டான சிலபிள்ஸ் தான் நம்ம சொல்லணும். பாடிச்ச மனசில் நம்ம பெருமாள் அப்படி கூட நினச்சிக்கலாமே. ஆனால் பாயிண்ட் இஸ் nasal syllables repeatedly is not a good way to sing Tanam. But these are all creeping into systems nowadays which students must make their effort. In fact, recently was an Arangetram where that student was having that tendency. But I have seen several other Vidwans also. The Mano Adharama practice, we have to practice lot of 3/5s. That means 3 plus 5. Tom tom ta tom ta nom tom ta. In the mari 3 and 5 use. Tom tom ta tom tom ta nom ta nom 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 ta nom ta nom ta nom. Tarom 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 tom tom tarom tom tom tarom tom tarom tom tarom tom tarom tom tarom அப்படின்னு ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணோம். அதை வந்து நம்ம ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணிட்டுனா தான் அந்த மாதிரி மனோதர்மம். இல்லைன்னா ஏதோ தப்பான ஃப்ரேசஸ் அங்கே வரும். வில் ஸ்டட்டர், வி ஒன்ட் சிங் கரெக்ட்லி, வில் சிங் ராங் டைப் ஆஃப் பேட்டர்ன்ஸ். எனிதிங் இஸ் நாட் அ ரைட் பேட்டர்ன் இன் தானம். தானத்துக்குன்னு ஒரு தர்மம், அந்த தர்மத்தை ஃபாலோ பண்ணோம். அந்த தர்மத்துக்குள்ளே லாட் ஆஃப் கிரியேட்டிவிட்டி யூ கேன் டூ. யூ கேன் சிங் பேட்டர்ன்ஸ். Sometimes you will see very good artists patterns of only 5s, only 7s. இதெல்லாம் வந்து tom tom terom tom terom tom terom tom terom tom terom tom terom tom tom terom 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 terom tom tom terom terom tom tom terom terom tom tom 3 plus 7, which is again another manifest. So like this all do a lot of creative things. அதை சர்வலகுவாக பாடுறது nom tonum 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 tum tum ta. You can do 3 3 3 plus 7 if you are thinking of it, which is a manifestation of 4. இந்த மாதிரிலாம் நம்ம நிறைய things still create. அதெல்லாம் வந்து amazing dash varieties you can create legally itself. Again practice and then going to the correct people to learn these things. Going to the wrong people who themselves they may not, blind leading the blind மாதிரி அவனும் சரியாக சொல்லி தர மாட்டான், நம்மளும் சரியாக இது பண்ண மாட்டோம். எல்லாம் வந்து ஒரு ஸ்டாண்டர்டே ஒரு சும்மா இருக்கோம். அப்போ எக்ஸலன்ஸ் இஸ் நாட். டேலண்ட் கேன் பி ஆக்சிடென்டல், ஃப்ளேர் கேன் பி ஆக்சிடென்டல், பட் எக்ஸலன்ஸ் இஸ் நாட். We have to work. And talent is not enough. I keep telling my students, talent is like credit card. You keep getting spammed by so many credit card offers, right? அது பாட்டுக்கு நம்மளை சேஸ் பண்ணி வீட்டுக்கு we'll give you the Citibank card, we'll give you this card, that card. Unless you pay your bills, you can't hold on to that card. So talent is like that. It has just come to you. It's just an offer from God. That is just that's it. Unless you pay your bills, which is the hard work that you need to practice to develop that talent, you will not be holding on to that talent. That talent can just get completely melted away before we even realize the spelling of melted. So like that. So, in other words, music and Mano Dharma are very, very, very serious subjects. It is not for the light-hearted, it is not for the lazy-bodied, it is for people who have a very serious approach to music. Music itself, especially Carnatic music or Western classical, Hindustani music, all these systems, they are not only demanding systems, they are also character building systems. The more you pursue them correctly, your character actually will evolve properly. The more we don't pursue them correctly, our mind will go on to all kinds of wrong ideas of music itself, about its context, about it. All these other anavasyams is what our mind will go into. So Mano Dharmam will go away somewhere else. It will go into everything other than music. And we'll be writing or talking about unnecessary things and still calling ourselves musicians. So music is a pursuit. It's a seeking for truth, seeking of truth, trying to do that all the time. Irukra zillions of truths, one or two we may be able to get a glimpse of, and that's all it is about. And that mindset is very important, and that mindset alone won't be enough to deliver what that thing needs. A lot of skill set is needed. So without one, the other won't work. Mindset வச்சுட்டு இது பண்ணால் சும்மா ராமகிருஷ்ணன் நம்ம ஆரத்தி வேணால் காட்டின்னு வீட்டிலே இருக்க வேண்டியது தவிர பாட முடியாது. பாடுறதுல ராங் மைண்ட் செட்டோட ப்ராக்டிஸ் பண்ணால் தப்பான கல்பனைகள் தான் வரும். ஏன் இப்படி பண்ணக்கூடாது அப்படின்னு வேணால் கேட்கலாம். Why can't I do this? அப்படின்றது it's not an intellectual statement at all, by the way. You should know. Somebody actually said, no knowledge is better than false knowledge. Similarly, அந்த இதுக்கு தான் அவித்யான்னு பேர். அவித்யான்றது ஒன்று. இந்த தப்பான திங்ஸை நல்லா பர்ஃபெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டு அதை போய் எல்லாருக்கும் பண்ணி அதை நல்ல பேக்கேஜிங்கில் பண்ணி அதை செல் பண்ணுறது not the dharma. So dharma itself means way of life, a way of approach, how we approach the whole art. So I'm very happy that I got an opportunity to share a couple of thoughts on this. You have any question? Yeah, tell me.
Sir, I want to ask about the Taram, instrumental and vocal.
Yeah, I would say that, depending on the instrument also, if you suppose you play the veena, the use of tala strings, veena, chitravina, that you can use num tum ta, so that wherever that silent accent is there, use the tala string, it will sound very colorful, provided it is tuned well. A lot of people don't tune the tala strings properly and still keep doing that. That is not dharma at all. So the tuning has to be fine for instrumental music. And for instruments like, you can sometimes use what they call as a bouncing type of bowing for some of the syllables. Some of those musicians used to play tanam very well, some violinists. I mean, மகான்கள் எவ்வளோ பேர் இருக்கா, நான் கேட்டு பிரமிச்சிருக்கேன். எவ்வளோ பிரில்லியன்ட் ஆர்டிஸ்ட்ஸ், அதுக்கு நிறைய ஒர்க்.
While singing, you spoke about melody. So, if you want to explore any rare ragam, and there is only one composition in that ragam, and there is no specific line in the ragam, so what?
Avoid Neravel in those kind of situations. Do not feel compelled to do Neravel in all the kind of things. If you are in performance things, sometimes even Kalpana Swarams is not needed in some of the songs. Alapana is not needed in some of those songs. If you do in songs which are not needed, that's a very good point you have raised actually. If you do Mano Dharmam in places where it is not needed, it is Mano Adharama only. That means you have not understood the spirit of the composition or the raga. Now, for example, when you sing a sublime composition like Brova Matamasame of Shama Sastri, nothing. It's so complete by itself. Brova Matamasame அப்படின்னு நம்மளுக்கு அதை பாடச்சே we won't even feel like doing anything on that. We will feel it's an imposition on that. Right? And don't do Mano Dharma like some kind of லிமிட்டெட் தாலி மீல் மாதிரி ஒரு ராகத்தில் கீர்த்தனத்தை பாடுது, இன்னும் 10 ராகத்தில் மனோதர்மத்தை பண்ணிட்டு வேறு ஒரு ராகத்தில் கீர்த்தனை பாடு, இந்த மாதிரியான ராங் திங்ஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து வி ஷுட் நாட் எவர் டூ. They are not either trendy, nor are they very evolved, nor are they dharma at all, first of all. We have to be